Something wild went down. My mama Rosa, who's always shown more love to my bro Jake than to me, actually locked me up in the dead of night to make sure her favorite kid didn't go hungry. I tried to fight back, but it was pointless. They were using me as their food source. Damn. I jolted awake from the nightmare, panting hard. Glancing around my familiar room, I instinctively checked my body. Arms, legs, still intact. I swiftly grabbed my phone. There was a trending topic about a dude walking the streets with bizarre moves, biting people. Oh crap. This was just like that one time before. 8 hours after the news dropped, the zombie outbreak hit. I glanced at the clock. It was noon. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. Right now, Rosa and Jake were out grabbing lunch. Memories of what they did to me in my past life flooded back. The thought made me sick, and I puked on the floor. My body trembled uncontrollably with fear. Last time, everything happened so fast. We barely had any food stashed at home, but Mama kept letting Jake eat whatever little we had. In the end, we survived by drinking rainwater. Naturally, my spoiled brother couldn't handle that. After just one day, he threw a fit, demanding meat. What I didn't see coming was that they decided not to come looking for me, but something way worse. That night, already drained from stress and lack of food, I passed out cold. When I woke up, they had me tied up in bed. I saw Jake holding a sharp tool, eyeing my foot. I was so scared I kicked him in the face. Before I could even process what was happening, Mama screamed and Jake, blinded by anger, swung the tool. Pain shot through my leg, and I screamed. Zombies outside heard and started banging on our door. "What are you yelling for? You want to get us all killed?" Rosa rushed over, slapped me, shoved a dirty sock in my mouth, and quickly bandaged my foot. Day after day, I watched them cut pieces off my foot, leg, arm. Once Jake brought freshly cooked meat, asking if I wanted any. I threw up all over the bed. Living in such a suffocating environment with no food or distractions only made Jake's mood worse. I wasn't just their food anymore. I was his anger outlet. Tormented day and night, I couldn't live or die. My cries turned into a raspy old woman's voice. I didn't want to live anymore. I looked at Rosa with pleading eyes, but she ignored me, bandaging me like she knew what she was doing, and comforted me. "Stay alive. Jake likes his meals fresh." Every day surviving on rainwater until one quiet night, I finally closed my eyes for good. Remembering all that horror, I shook uncontrollably. The tragedy of my past life stared back at me, tearing at my heart. I quickly wiped away my tears, forcing myself to pull it together. This deep hatred couldn't be forgiven. In this life, I definitely avenged my pathetic past self. Only 7.5 hours left. I hustled over to the upscale neighborhood, scanned my fingerprint to enter the top floor of the first building. Because Rosa favored Jake, I left home early and worked my butt off in society. That's how I met my boss, who taught me how to make bank, just as new business trends popped up. Last year, I managed to buy a house and a whip outright. I scoped out the spacious 200 square meter penthouse. The view was way better than the cramped little house I lived in with them. Just thinking about letting them stay in the house I bought while still catering to them made me want to slap myself. I stupidly brought them over, feeling bad for Rosa after Papa died when she cried in front of me. What a mistake. I practically invited danger in. At least my past self had the sense not to tell them about both houses because of their favoritism. Opening the fridge, I found some veggies had gone bad from being left alone for a while. Time was tight, so I just chucked the rotten ones. I jumped on grocery and delivery apps, ordered a ton of veggies, fruits, frozen meat, snacks, spices, and essentials, all in huge amounts. My hands cramped from clicking so much, but damn, delivery services are lifesavers. I decided to splurge on heaps of lobster, barbecue, cakes, fried chicken, and grabbed 10 cups of bubble tea. After the apocalypse, these things, except barbecue, would stay fresh for about 2 days in the fridge to keep anyone from noticing I had resources. I split delivery addresses among different buildings and had them all left in the underground parking. Today was a weekday, so it shouldn't be spotted unless someone was driving by. I should be cool, just staying low in the elevator. After ordering all that, the truck I had scheduled arrived. I hopped in, asked the driver to take me to the biggest appliance store in the area, planning to snag some freezers, fans, and more. In the truck, I used my spare time to order several cases of bottled water, having them delivered to spots 2, 4, and 7 floors below my place. I found these were rental floors from snooping in the building chat, so no one should be around them. Bottled water's a heavy lift. Stashing it around would mess with my efficiency otherwise. In the middle of my shopping spree, my phone rang. The screen showed it was Rosa calling. Swallowing my revulsion, I answered. Your bank account had tens of thousands, didn't it? Why is there suddenly not enough for a card swipe? Rosa's sharp voice was like nails on a chalkboard, waking me up. Bank account? Checking my wallet? Damn. I lost the card I used for supplies shopping. Transfer the money over now. I'm still 5,000 short to pay for Jake's meal. 5,000. I scoffed. The old me would have been deeply hurt, never having been treated to a 500 yen meal all my life by her. But now, as mama, I'll send you 10,000 later. Buy yourself and Jake some new clothes. We were nearing the appliance store, and I didn't want to waste time on her any longer. The longer they stayed out shopping, the better. Oh good, Jake also wants those shoes and a gaming console, so send a bit extra. Without waiting for a reply, she hung up swiftly. The driver beside me was silent for a bit, then sighed. If you hadn't called her, I'd have thought you were just a girl in debt to loan sharks. I shrugged, feeling helpless. In the end, I just transferred 100,000. When the phone rang again, I couldn't be bothered and ignored it. Only 6 hours left. I quickly picked out a few large freezers and some silent fans. As I passed the electronics section, I grabbed a few phones, tablets, and laptops. I threw in an extra 2,000 win for them to load the devices with TV shows, movies, novels, games, and also snagged some free power banks. While moving the freezers, I saw the shelves behind their warehouse and convinced the manager with some cash to sell me those too. The truck driver stayed behind to help load and organize everything while I hopped into a cab. Time was tight, I couldn't watch them load everything, but since I tipped them, it should be fine. In the cab, I handed the driver 1,000 yuan to take the scenic route towards my house. Any hardware stores we passed, I'd pick up some toolboxes, hammers, poles, locks, lights, and so on. If we passed a pharmacy, I grabbed some meds, vitamins. At bookstores, I snagged a stack of books and comics. And at convenience stores, I loaded up on snacks and supplies. Better safe than sorry. I shopped until I was wiped, and the driver finally couldn't contain his curiosity. What are you doing with all this? I'm helping the disaster area, I replied. When the driver heard that, he got pumped up, and the car sped up. Every stop after, he jumped out with me to help grab things. With his help, I got home way sooner than expected. I gave the driver some meds and a toolbox, urging him to head home early. He just smiled, waved it off, and handed me a bag of candy meant for his kid, asking me to pass it to the kids in the disaster area. Only 4 hours left. I dragged everything I bought home with great difficulty. Just as I plopped onto the couch, the truck arrived. I dragged my tired self downstairs. The driver was already bent over, ready to help me move the heavy freezers. I was about to refuse when he interrupted with hopeful glee. After this job, I get to head back home and see my kids. I silently helped him move everything, then gave him some meds and groceries, suggesting he finish early and head home. The driver thanked me profusely before driving off with his big truck. I watched him leave, feeling a pang of sadness. If only my family had even a shred of the decency these people did, I might not have been driven to such ruthlessness. I quickly hauled water and every online purchased item I could grab up and down the stairs. Luckily, I barely ran into anyone. Just the occasional person, but they'd never guess since I had a cloth covering everything. When I finally finished moving everything with just 1 hour left before the zombie outbreak, I pulled out some spare company cameras. The boss had me hold on to them, and I tossed them in the house. I set aside some groceries and supplies, picked out a few cameras, and returned to my old home. When I opened the door, thankfully, they weren't back yet. I quickly hid the cameras and hooked them up to some small solar panels. I stuck the solar panels to the outside of the AC unit with some tape. You can't see them from inside. They'd only be noticed if the AC was on. But running it would attract zombies, so it's a perfect spot. To make sure I didn't miss any action, these little solar panels would keep the cameras running even if the power went out. I finished setting things up and was about to leave when Rosa and Jake came back. No, I should say Rosa and Jake returned. Even before they opened the door, I could hear their laughter outside. When they saw me, their faces instantly went stern. Jake casually tossed a bunch of bags with logos at me. Go wash these up, then get me some fruit. I'm gonna play games. In the past, I probably would have obeyed like a dog. Why? Because my family taught me that my brother's status would always be the highest. Watching his arrogant face, I felt nothing but hate, except for a faint trace of fear. Remembering how I once believed in our sibling bond during the apocalypse made me sick. What are you staring at? Didn't you hear your brother? You never answer your phone. I don't know what you're messing around with. You said you'd give us 120,000, so why only 100,000? Maybe my glare was too resentful. Rosa yanked my ear harshly. Ouch! Mama, stop pulling. I invested the money. Can't get it back right now. I forced myself to endure it, pretending to comply like before. Invest in what? Get it back tomorrow. You gave so little that I couldn't even buy Chanel. Happy to see your mom embarrassed, are you? Why did I give birth to such a disgrace? Rosa spat out insults. I gave you 100,000, didn't I said, clutching my aching ear. Your brother just bought tons of clothes, shoes, games. Where's the money for my clothes? Rosa sounded increasingly justified, pulling even harder. The painful memories of past abuse rushed back. I forced myself to look at Jake, lounging on the couch, playing games. He lay there with a game controller, sipping soda, ignoring our chaos. Had I not lived through the last life, I might have just assumed my relationship with Jake was bad. Turns out he never saw me as a sister, not even as a person. I glanced at the clock on the wall, enduring the searing pain in my ear. The clock showed 7:43. I stopped breathing for a second. Only 17 minutes till the zombies, and it took just over 10 to run from here to my place. No time, Mama. Mama, let me go. I'll get it back now. Rosa let go, half believing me. Really, she was a doctor from a small town who didn't know a thing about investments. She looked to Jake for a clue, and I let out a cold laugh inside. I used to think Rosa just favored Jake. Now I see she saw me as an outsider, never believed me at all. Looks like she miscalculated. Jake never really applied himself growing up. All he ever did was get into fights, drink, and play video games. No way he'd know about this stuff. But what she didn't know was that her precious son, who loved to play king at home, was the biggest show-off. He pretended to think for a minute. Just as I suspected, he told me to go get some cash and grab him some fried chicken and a Coke at the same time. I plastered a fake smile on my face and quickly agreed. Hold up, I'm coming with you. My smile froze on my face. After a lot of sweet talking, she reluctantly let me go out. Once the door shut, I sprinted back to the other apartment complex, faster than I'd ever run in my life. When I pressed the fingerprint scanner at the entrance, my palms were sweaty with nerves, and it took forever before it finally let me in. At my door, I double-checked the security door and main door were locked. The screams from downstairs were agonizingly loud. My heart clenched tight. Only after making sure everything was locked did I finally close the door and slump to the ground. Judgment Day had finally started. With the screams from below, I calmly drank my milk tea and munched on the barbecue skewers I had delivered earlier. I couldn't be bothered with the news, journalists getting bitten and mass panic. I'd seen it all in my past life. I opened the chat group for the residents from that neighborhood. As expected, they were all freaking out about the horror unfolding outside. The property management was reassuring everyone in the group. The government is sending help, so don't be afraid. Just lock your doors and windows and don't go out. With everyone panicking, the chat quickly turned chaotic, suffocating with all the complaints and anxiety. Then, the last message brought silence. Does anyone have food to sell? I'm terrified to go out and have nothing at home. At times like this, no one wanted to risk too much too soon. A familiar avatar replied, I have some. It's $5,000 for a single lettuce. I smirked. My dumb brother took the bait. What? That's daylight robbery. Yeah, we're neighbors. Can't you cut us a break? Before leaving my place, I had packed the kitchen full of fresh veggies, juicy fruits, and abundance unlike anything. Broke fools. If you can't afford it, don't whine. Jake casually shared a screenshot showing someone had already wired him $500,000. Then he snapped a bunch of pictures showing the stockpiles of food and drinks in the fridge. The group chat went silent for a moment before a few rich folks chimed in. Young man, I'll take some. Count me in. I'll transfer $200,000. Can I pick my veggies? I want some too. I'll pay top dollar for the whole lot. I pulled up the security camera footage. The security cams are great. I can see their greedy smiles crystal clear. We're flipping rich, Mama. We're gonna be filthy rich at this rate. Jake's eyes gleamed with excitement. It was his first time handling so much money. Rosa patted him with pride. Yes, yes, my son is so smart, much smarter than that dumb sister of yours. Watching them greedily pocket the cash, I chuckled. These fools couldn't grasp the value of food. Not in this life or the last. Jake led people in one by one, showing off the stuffed fridge, basking in admiration and envy. What are you looking at? Pick and get lost. 10 grand for a lousy cabbage. Grab it and scram. They dared not argue, hurrying away with their goods, afraid Jake might change his mind and snatch them back. Those who bought pandered to Jake in the group chat, hoping to score more goodies next time. Then the chat weirdly went silent. No one responded to the bootlicker. From the camera, Jake's crazed laughter echoed again. Made $4 million today. Who knew making money was so easy? Son, keep it down. Don't attract those filthy things outside. Rosa nervously tugged at her beloved boy. Jake gave her a dismissive look. What are you scared of? The zombies are all in the other building. The door downstairs is still locked. They can't get in without Judy. We can live it up. They can get eaten by zombies over there, and I'll make my fortune here. Yes, yes, my son is so lucky, and I'll enjoy the good life with you. Rosa clicked her tongue in disdain. That unlucky Judy. Good thing I didn't go with her to get cash. Who knows where she'd have died? I couldn't be bothered listening to them badmouth me. Just as I was about to turn off the monitor, Rosa heaved a long sigh. Thank goodness for the zombie outbreak. Otherwise, I don't know how we'd have gotten your sister's apartment. Now that she's dead, once it's over, the place will naturally be yours. My fingers froze on the keyboard. What Jake said next floored me. That witch didn't deserve to be my sister. Good riddance. Saves me from putting her down myself. Jake lovingly twirled a knife, its cold gleam freshly sharpened. I slammed the laptop shut, curling up tight. The threat of death loomed over me. The scene from my past life flashed through my mind like a nightmare, leaving me gasping for air. Wiping the sweat from my brow, I finally caught my breath. I had thought desperation drove them to it the last time. Turns out, I wouldn't have lived even without the zombie apocalypse. Well then, I laughed, sending Rosa a pre-written message. I can't wait to see your show, Rosa. Don't let me down. The next morning, I made breakfast with frozen dumplings and a cup of soy milk. It would have been a perfect start if not for those screams downstairs. On the camera, Jake was buzzing about making another fortune. Rosa looked off, her flattering slower than usual. A knock came again. Jake casually went to open it, but the menacing look on the guy at the door gave him pause. In a flash, Jake was punched to the ground by the man in charge. Clutching his stomach, Jake cried out in pain. The ground by the man in charge, clutching his stomach, Jake cried out in pain. Rosa screamed, trying to help, but was pulled back and slapped twice by the accomplices. The man in charge walked in, getting more excited with each step. Damn, so much food, he exclaimed. This will last us a while. Yeah, boss. Thank goodness those people ratted out this place. So much food and no zombies. What a find. His followers chimed in, trying to impress him. As they emptied the fridge into their backpacks, he glanced at Jake, who was standing nearby, with a face like he'd seen a ghost. You're something else, kid. Out of all the places we've crashed, you actually opened the door for us. Everyone burst out laughing. Jake shook with rage, ready to spit some nasty words, but Rosa quickly clamped a hand over his mouth. Please, guys, leave us some food. It's just me and my boy, and life's tough as it is. Watching the fridge get emptied made her face turn ashen. The leader walked up to them, staring Jake down. He roughly grabbed Jake's hair, spitting right in his face. Stop pretending. Aren't you tough? So where's the rest of the food? Tell me, or else I'll... Jake, furious and humiliated, spat back in his face. I'm Jake, and I've never let anyone push me around. Who do you think you are? If you know what's good for you, get out of here before I lose my patience. Hearing Jake's bold words, Rosa was terrified. She crawled over, crying, and begged for their mercy. The man thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. He kicked Rosa aside and slammed Jake against the window. The pain from the glass made Jake want to scream, but the sight of the horde of zombies below rendered him silent. blood-red zombies with twisted faces noticed Jake and rushed towards him, pounding on the fragile door below. The terrifying sight left Jake speechless. "I'm giving you one more chance. Talk, or I'll throw you out there," the man threatened. "I'm telling you, there's nothing left." Jake was crying now, shaking his head frantically. Nothing of his earlier bravado left. The man sneered and reached to unlock the window. "Then you can feed the zombies." "Wait, don't hurt my son." Rosa crawled over and clung to Jake. After a pause, she reluctantly confessed, "There's a bit of food in the closet." They found some instant noodles there and soon tore the place apart. When they heard someone say the zombies were about to break in downstairs, they made a hasty exit with their loot. Jake looked at the trashed kitchen, his anger unfocused, taking it all out on Rosa. "You witch! You were hiding food from me." Jake pushed Rosa to the ground and, despite her terrified eyes, wrapped his hands around her throat. "It wasn't me. They took all the food. What am I gonna do? My meat's all gone. How are you gonna pay me back?" Jake screamed his anguish. "That's your sister's!" Rosa gasped, her eyes rolling. "You mean Judy? What do you mean? Explain!" Jake released her, letting Rosa gasp for air, barely spared from being strangled to death. She thought about a message she'd seen and felt her belief and bitterness grow. "Your sister's still alive." Sure enough, as soon as she said that, Jake made a phone call. "Judy, where did you hide the food? We've been cleaned out, so get us some food quick." I chuckled. "What's wrong with you, Jake? The noodles I hid in the closet got stolen. What makes you think we have more?" "What do you mean? How do you know about the noodles getting stolen?" Before he could keep rambling, I hung up. In the footage, he glared at Rosa and started their argument again. "Give me your phone." "No way." Rosa was sweating bullets, clutching her phone tightly, knowing something was up. Jake got even more suspicious. "Why not? Did you tip her off?" Rosa shook her head desperately, caught in the middle of this standoff. When a knock sounded on the door, they both froze. Rosa was pushed to peer through the peephole. "Open up, cowards! Take the money and don't let us in." They knew exactly what was happening, but with nothing left, they kept their mouths shut. Outside, the people realized they were playing possum and started trying to break down the door. With each bang, the door got weaker. I watched Jake, pale with fear, jittery hands dialing my number again. "Judy, sis, I was wrong, okay? I didn't know better. You have to have some food left. Help me, there's a crowd at the door. They're gonna break it down." Listening to him panic, I stayed silent while he glanced at the buckling door and the angry shouting outside, almost in tears. "Please, sis, please? They'll kill me if they get in and there's nothing left." I feigned a sigh. "Jake, since you are my brother, I can't let you get killed." Even saying it made me sick. Jake's relief was obvious. "Sis, I knew you were the best. Pay up, then I'll tell you where they're hidden." After a pause from his end, 10 seconds passed. "Judy, are you out of your mind?" Jake exploded in anger. "What? Can't afford it? Then stop begging, pretending." I hung up, feeling pleased. But that was just the beginning. In the days that followed, the water and power started going out, but Jake and Rosa's angry texts kept coming. I sipped the soup I had just made with an electric rice cooker, sighing contentedly. Thank goodness I once saw a tip online about solar panels saving energy. I bought a few out of curiosity, and now they were really handy. Through the surveillance, I watched the two of them sit on the couch, lost in their own thoughts, speechless. These past few days, Jake had found a few bags of snacks he had hidden under his bed, which he ate all by himself, not sharing a crumb with Mama. Jake still had a bit of energy complaining about being starved on the couch, but Rosa hadn't eaten anything for days, so she was too weak to even talk. Jake looked at his stomach, empty for days now, and remembered the hint I'd sent last night. "There's meat in the fire hydrant." Sure enough, after struggling with the decision for a while, he pushed Rosa off the couch. "Didn't Judy say there's food in the hydrant outside? Would you go get it?" Rosa couldn't believe her ears. She could be considered 1 foot in the grave already while he was in his prime, sending his mom out there to risk her life. "What are you looking at? Get out there." Jake still thought he was the spoiled prince of the past. I clicked my tongue. The way these two ordered others around was exactly the same. With no zombies outside for the moment, Jake grabbed Rosa by the collar and shoved her to the door, but seeing zombies wandering nearby, Rosa went pale. She clutched the door and wouldn't let go. "You old hag, let go. You want to starve your son to death?" "Jake," Rosa pleaded. "At my age, I can't outrun a zombie." "Are you trying to kill me?" Desperate, Rosa cried out, but Jake was fuming as the zombies heard the noise and rushed over, their bodies contorted in their sprint. As the fierce zombies charged, Jake froze in fear. Rosa seized the chance to slip back inside and slam the door shut. As soon as the door closed, countless zombies roared outside, pounding viciously at the door. The door was already damaged, now a crack formed. It wouldn't hold for long before it was completely destroyed. Terrified, they crawled into the bedroom, locking the door behind them. After a while, they heard the sound of something heavy smashing outside. Their door must have been destroyed. Huddled together, shaking, they didn't dare make a sound as the slow, guttural growls from the zombies outside pounded their hearts cruelly. For the past 2 days, they'd been trapped in the bedroom, unable to get out, even using the bathroom and clothes and wrapping it up to leave in the corner. The closed room now reeked of a nauseating stench. Rosa, who hadn't eaten for days, nearly passed out from the foul air. Seeing her look near death, I activated the speaker from the surveillance cam in their room. "There's food hidden in this room!" Rosa jolted, her dull eyes suddenly bright with hope. "Where?" Jake, hungry, ignored the fact there was a surveillance cam in the room. All they wanted now was to survive. I didn't respond, just kept talking to myself. "Do you know where I am? I'm in a fancy flat in another neighborhood, with enough food to last several lifetimes." Jake's anger flared up again. "Bitch, how dare you? Get over here and take us there! I'm starving!" Rosa, trembling, knelt and begged. "Judy, I'm sorry, I'm about to starve." "I don't ask you to take us there, just tell me where the food is in this room, you idiot!" Jake slapped Rosa, who was trying to get up. "We can find the food in here ourselves. She needs to get us the hell out of this place." "All right, I'll come get you," I said softly and hung up. Jake started frantically tearing apart the bedroom, but found nothing. Rosa, seeing no hope, broke down in tears. "Damn it! If I'd known, I'd have let that guy throw you out." Remembering being pinned against the window sent chills down Jake's spine. "What are you talking about?" Rosa replied, agitated, swatting away Jake's hand, clinging to her. Her eyes were full of distrust. "Others have kids to rely on in old age. Mine's a curse." "You? What are you talking about?" Jake stammered, backing away, scared of the manic look in Rosa's eyes. Rosa glared, trying to slap Jake, but with so little strength, she was the one shoved to the ground. She looked at the son she had once cradled so dearly and let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, my good son, you're really treating me like this now?" "Well, you've already doomed your father beautifully. Compared to that, this isn't even the worst." She didn't answer Jake's questioning, just kept mocking herself. "A while back, if your sister hadn't texted me, I'd be in the dark forever. Your dad was a truck driver who only asked you to study well, and you spiked his drink with sleeping pills? You wanted him dead. That witch couldn't possibly know." Jake's face was full of horror, his expression revealing everything. Looking at Rosa sprawled out on the floor, after a while, disgust crept into Jake's eyes as he mocked her. "Don't start lecturing me now. Weren't you pretty happy when you got that insurance payout, you?" Rosa was so mad she nearly lost her breath. "People are dead. I had to take what I could, right? If you weren't obsessed with this house, that money could have let us live comfortably in the county for the rest of our lives. Not like these uncultured city folk. It's because you always told me everything my sister had was mine, including the house, that I bothered coming here at all." Jake was so angry he grabbed Rosa by the neck, and she fought back, gritting her teeth. Rosa clawed Jake's face, and just as he was about to punch her, a memory hit him. He saw himself with a knife, slashing at a woman tied to a bed. She had scratched him too. Jake spaced out and instinctively took out the knife tucked in his waistband. He thought he heard his mom screaming. When he snapped back, he noticed Rosa's left foot covered in blood. His glistening knife was stuck in it. He stuffed a sock in Rosa's mouth as she awkwardly tried to bandage herself, unable to scream from the pain. I couldn't believe Rosa wasn't dead yet, But seeing her pale face, it seemed it wouldn't be long. I told them the food was hidden in the ceiling. Jake found some bread, water, and a basic first aid kit. Jake didn't dare be rude to me anymore. When I told him where the food was, he politely apologized and asked when I'd come get him. With the food and some antiseptic, Rosa looked a bit better. I sighed in relief. Killing them was too easy, and not the outcome I had planned. While sipping my freshly brewed coffee, I felt restless, constantly jolted awake by dreams from my past life. Watching surveillance, Rosa and Jake would shiver whenever they crossed eyes and dared not speak to each other. They had been locked in the bedroom for far too long, overwhelmed by the stench and Rosa's odd gaze. Jake had enough. Right, he started abusing Rosa like he did to me in the past life. But today was different. Instead of hitting her, Jake took a knife and hacked off Rosa's bandaged left foot. Rosa barely let out a scream before Jake slapped her to the ground. Sis can only take one person, and that's me. Keeping you is just more trouble. You'd probably take me to court once this zombie mess ends. Die now, Jake said viciously, then ran over to the camera trying to win me over. Sis, Mama's leg is broken. She can't walk. If you can only take one, take me. I'm a guy. I can help kill zombies. I couldn't help but laugh. If you could fight zombies, would you really have needed to eat me in our past life, and this time around, letting our elderly mother grab food while you hid at home? I cleared my throat and pretended to be remorseful. How could you, little brother? She's our mom, after all. Seeing Rosa's eyes warm a little, I promptly hit her with a dose of reality. Sighing, I feigned heartache. All right, then. You are the only son of our family. If not you, then who? Right, Mama? This is what you taught me since I was small. I didn't believe it until you beat it into me. Rosa froze, ignoring the pain, cried and hoarsely begged, Judy, Mama was wrong. I was really confused back then. Please save Mama. Your brother is nothing but scum. But isn't this what you taught me from childhood? Back in middle school, when he pushed me down the stairs for not giving him pocket money, I was left with a shattered leg for half a year. And when I cried to you about him being scum, you told me to let it go because he was the only son. Oh, back when the Cambridge University offer came, you claimed we couldn't afford schooling for two, so you sacrificed me for him to study. And now, sacrificing you for him to survive is perfectly fine, right? Every word I spoke made Rosa freeze more. She dragged her foot and forced herself to the camera, her smile more pain than crying. Mama was just worried about your brother because he was young, that's all. Oh, let's drop it then. But can you tell me when my birthday is? Rosa paused. Her chapped lips couldn't utter a word. She pampered her son endlessly. But had she ever properly celebrated her daughter's birthday? Maybe once before Jake was born. It was so long ago she couldn't recall. I let out a cold laugh and softly said, Jake, I'll come get you soon. Jake was delighted. All right, sis. After I cut the feed, he turned and beat Rosa to the ground. I'm no good. Neither are you, son. I'm your mom. As Rosa's cries didn't stop, Jake shut the monitor off, enjoyed a hot shower, then cooked up some steak for dinner. When I turned the feed back on, I nearly gagged. Jake had cut off Rosa's leg, roasted it with a lighter, and was eating it. As unsettling as it was, I had expected it, so I calmed quickly. The zombies came, food grew scarce, and this time, Rosa became the meal. Watching Jake offer Rosa meat only for her to throw up, I glanced at my own steak. It looked just as red. I lost my appetite and tossed it away. Jake was carving Rosa up just as he had done to me in the past, making sure she wouldn't die too quickly. During this time, Jake kept asking when I would come for him. I brushed him off, telling him to wait a little longer. Rosa already seemed like a shell of herself, her eyes hollow, slumped in a corner. But Jake wasn't merciful, force-feeding her to keep her alive. Months passed, and Jake grew bored, crying for more food. I told him that there were snacks and steaks outside by the fire hydrants, which he could roast with his lighter. He believed me, and after days of mustering courage, he finally opened the bedroom door. The door was shattered, and the zombies seemed to have moved on. Jake took a deep breath and snuck outside, sprinting to the elevators to grab a hefty black bag from the hydrant. Bag in hand, Jake eagerly turned back, only to see zombies at the doorstep. They saw him and with a glint in their eyes, they sprinted toward him. Jake, startled, ran in the opposite direction, straight into more zombies. Jake closed his eyes, his legs shaking uncontrollably. Just then, the door in front of him swung open, and he was yanked inside. The door shut before Jake could even get a good look at the person in front of him. Just as he was about to nervously thank them, the package in his hand was snatched away. "Oh, it's you again." The familiar faces made Jake's complexion turn pale with fear. After Jake went to get food, he never came back. I couldn't bear the thought of Jake getting bitten by a zombie, so I used a drone to search the neighborhood for him. I didn't find Jake looking like a zombie after searching around. Turns out, he had run in the opposite direction. Maybe he hid in one of the open houses. I quickly operated the drone to look through the windows near my floor. As I suspected, he was in the house diagonally across from us, with the same group of looters who had stolen our vegetables before. The audio through the window wasn't great, but it seemed like Jake had delivered something again. The package, though, was already rotten. Technically edible, but probably would give you the runs. I thought about letting Jake get chased by zombies, then survive on food that's gone bad. Even pigs wouldn't eat. Didn't expect he'd be hijacked. What shocked me more was the scene that unfolded next. These guys hadn't had any nightlife in months. Even though Jake looked a bit rough, he was still a somewhat good-looking young guy. So Jake ended up pinned down by a group of men. His cries and pleas couldn't change what was happening. The prized knife he always kept tucked in his waistband, along with his clothes, was tossed carelessly to the ground. Over on my monitor, Rosa looked nearly lifeless. With Jake stuck there, I could only use the drone to deliver food and water to Rosa every day. She wanted to die, often crying to my drone, begging me to end her life, but I wouldn't let her. She'd stubbornly refuse the bread I sent, so I'd use one drone to nudge her stomach until she yelped in pain, then quickly maneuver another drone to shove bread into her mouth. She almost choked several times but scrambled for water to wash it down. Once she asked me, "Judy, have you forgiven me?" I coldly replied, "No, I just don't want Jake to return hungry. At least he can have something fresh to eat." I threw her words right back at her. After hearing that, she went back to her despondent state, looking as lifeless as I once felt. Meanwhile, on the other side with the drone, Jake was tortured nearly to death. Each day, the men took turns with him. Occasionally, they captured girls too, but just when Jake thought he might have a break, these girls would rebel too fiercely and get thrown out the window, dying instantly, scared stiff. Jake, desperate to live, eventually fell silent, accepting his fate. Months passed. The looters couldn't find food anymore. Since there was nothing to eat, they vented their frustrations on Jake, messing with him so much that they dislocated his arm. Over time, they grew famished too. Their eyes got blurrier as they looked at Jake. Then one day, Jake snapped and ran. He overheard them planning to eat him. Stumbling, he ran home and burst into the bedroom to find Rosa's tears streaming down her face. Rosa looked healthier than Jake, probably because Jake hadn't eaten well over there. Now he was skeletal and smelled terrible. Jake dashed into Rosa's arms, but she picked up a hammer and struck Jake's head hard. "Die, just die, still want to eat me?" Jake cried out in pain, turned to the monitor, and begged me through tears. Sis, save me." I chuckled coldly. "You think you're worthy to be my brother? Better off dead, so I don't have to do it myself." Jake, hearing these familiar words, didn't get to explain before Rosa smashed his face with the hammer again. A year into the apocalypse, it began to snow. I was munching on chips and watching downloaded TV shows, tears streaming as I admired the epic love story of the moon god and the goddess. Suddenly, the radio beside me crackled with a signal. Excitedly, I paused the show and cranked the radio volume. The familiar voice announced that the country had eliminated most zombies and set up bases for the public. Those without supplies could go there. It wouldn't be long before zombies were wiped out nationwide. They urged everyone not to lose hope. Filled with emotion after hearing it, I glanced at my stash of supplies that seemed to pile up over these months. Maybe I could donate some to the base since I probably wouldn't finish them in a decade. I waited a bit, and soon enough, there were plenty of military vehicles picking people up for the base. I packed up 50 boxes of supplies, loaded my little cart, and made multiple trips down. The soldiers in uniform were moved to tears when they received it, insisting I visit the base as a gesture of thanks. They reassured me that zombies were almost non existent now. If I felt uneasy, they'd bring me back when they headed out on another mission tomorrow. Their hopeful eyes were hard to turn down, and I was curious about the outside world I hadn't seen in ages. So I tagged along. The base was a refurbished school, huge and well organized, not a bit chaotic. Each person in the base wore a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. Upon learning I donated so many supplies, they all came up to thank me. Roaming around, a mother and her young son approached. "Miss, have you traveled abroad?" the boy nervously asked me. I knelt down and asked kindly, "No." "Why do you ask, sweetie?" He held up a bag of candy for me to see. I instantly recognized it as the one an uncle, the driver, had given me when I bought my supplies. At the time, I told him it was for the disaster area's kids, so I thought of continuing the goodwill by gifting it to the kids here. I patted his head and said, "A driver uncle gave this to me, asking me to give it to lovable kids like you." The boy beamed. "My dad's a driver. He knows lots of people. This candy's not sold domestically yet. Before my dad last called Mama, he said he got someone to buy it. But when he returned, he said he donated it to the disaster area kids." I was shocked, marveling at the incredible coincidence. "Where's your dad? He bought you this bag of candy." "Sis, my dad is helping with disaster recovery. Soon we'll have a new home." I remembered the driver uncle who helped us move around with a big smile. I nodded heavily. Life is always full of hope. It wasn't long before the last zombie in New York was killed. Turns out the zombie ran too fast on the prairie, and they spent half a day just chasing it. I went back to the old house. When I opened the door to the room, a stench almost knocked me out. Rosa was huddled in the corner, trembling with blood all over her mouth. Next to her was Jake, already dead and rotting, his face destroyed, arm dislocated, eyes wide open, not at peace. Jake's limbs were gone too. You can imagine what happened. Rosa ate Jake. I took Rosa to the hospital. Her lower body was gone, and there was some rotting stench at her waist. The doctor said she was permanently paralyzed. After another half-month, Rosa regained some consciousness. I leaned close to her ear and pretended to remind her, "Oh my mama, how could you eat your brother? He was the only son in our family. Who will carry on the family line now?" She shivered all over. Fear and terror made her tremble, and she vomited and fell off the bed, sitting on the floor. She sat there, not caring about the strange looks from others, crying and laughing at the same time. Maybe she was crying because she no longer had a son, or maybe she was laughing because he's finally dead. A few days later, the doctor texted me saying Rosa had schizophrenia and depression, wanting to kill or jump off buildings. A few days after that, the doctor told me she actually jumped out of the hospital room. Luckily, there were bushes below, and she lived. But she crushed her bones. I went to see her in the hospital, just like she used to see me lying with a fracture. Useless. How did you get a comminuted fracture? Living is a waste of money. Might as well just die. The things she used to yell at me, I returned them all to her now. I stood there healthy, while she was forever bedridden, never leaving this place. After many years, when I forget her, and she's left uncared for with hemiplegia, will she die in the silence of the night, just like I once almost did? After leaving the hospital, I went to the Public Security Bureau and changed my name. From now on, there's no more Judy in the world, and I hope to always live happily. Of course, I will live happily. After all, I've got $8 million in my account,